So in the next couple of days, the WNBA players are going to decide if they want to go on strike. And if they decide to go on strike, apparently that could be the end of the WNBA. The WNBA cannot come back from this.
For almost 12 months, the basketball world got sold a story. Women's basketball was supposedly having its breakthrough moment. Headlines everywhere talked about record-breaking growth, unstoppable rise, and a sport finally ready to compete with the men's league. Everyone kept pushing the same narrative. This was the turning point we'd all been waiting for. But then reality showed up and shattered everything in front of everyone. When Unrivaled launched its second season on TNT, only 107,000 people tuned in. Compare that to last season's opener, which pulled 313,000 viewers. This wasn't just a rough night or poor timing or bad luck with scheduling. This was a complete freefall. A 65% drop in viewership in just 1 year, despite being on a major network that poured serious money into promotion. When any league hemorrhages nearly 2/3 of its audience in 12 months, that's not a blip, that's the market delivering a verdict. And here's where things get really uncomfortable for a lot of people. Remove Caitlin Clark from the equation, and viewers simply disappear. Not gradually, not partially, they vanish completely. The numbers don't lie, and they don't care about feelings or politics or good intentions. This isn't about being negative or biased. This is cold, hard data that speaks for itself. Last year, Clark's presence created an illusion that fooled everyone. Media outlets convinced themselves the entire sport had leveled up. They thought new superstars had emerged and that fans were finally hungry for the product. What actually happened was much simpler and way more brutal. One exceptional athlete created a temporary surge. Take her away and everything crashes back down to where it started. And where it started is barely sustainable as a business model. Unrivaled was designed to prove the sport had depth beyond one player, that audiences would show up for other names, that loyalty existed for the game itself rather than just one transcendent talent. Instead, it demonstrated exactly the opposite. The league bet heavily on players like Paige Bueckers, marketing her as the sport's next big thing. Reports suggest she earned around $348,000 for her involvement. The payoff? Those same 107,000 viewers. That's not star power materializing. That's a marketing strategy imploding in real time. Break this down as a pure business proposition, and the numbers become genuinely embarrassing. Each viewer is essentially costing the operation multiple dollars, before you even factor in production costs, travel expenses, staff salaries, insurance, facilities, and broadcast infrastructure. That's not a growth trajectory. That's financial quicksand dressed up as progress. TNT didn't back Unrivaled out of charity. They bought into the narrative that women's basketball had finally reached prime-time readiness. Those ratings just demolished that entire premise. What most people missed is that Unrivaled was never really about basketball in the first place. It was about creating leverage. The whole thing was designed as a bargaining chip, giving WNBA players an alternative during contract negotiations. The strategy seemed logical. If players had somewhere else to go, they could demand higher salaries, better revenue sharing, and stronger protection. On paper, it looked brilliant. In practice, it's collapsing faster than anyone anticipated. Leverage only functions when your backup plan actually works. Unrivaled was supposed to be the safety net that proved player value. Instead, it's reinforcing every doubt about market demand. Each disappointing broadcast weakens their negotiating position. Each failed rating gives owners more confidence. Remember just weeks ago, when WNBA players were talking openly about strikes. They spoke about refusing disrespect and demanding what they felt they'd earned. Now suddenly, those same athletes are considering playing under the old collective bargaining agreement, the exact deal they previously called insulting. The same salary structure they'd publicly rejected. That dramatic shift didn't happen because anyone had a change of heart. It happened because reality crashed the party. The NBA offered WNBA players 50% of net revenue, which means profit after expenses. That's how virtually every successful sports league operates worldwide. Players rejected that and demanded 30% of gross revenue instead. Revenue before expenses. Under their proposal, the league would hemorrhage an estimated $700 million. Not over time, immediately. That figure alone shows how disconnected the demands had become from basic economics. This wasn't strategic negotiating. This was entitlement fueled by a completely false belief that mainstream popularity had permanently arrived. The market just corrected that belief without mercy. Ratings don't negotiate. Advertisers don't compromise. Investors don't care about storylines. They care about one thing only: attention that converts into actual revenue. Unrivaled failed that test spectacularly on the biggest platform it'll ever receive. If the upcoming season moves forward under the old agreement, the power dynamics become crystal clear. Players technically keep their right to strike, but owners hold all the cards now. There's zero urgency to negotiate, no pressure to give ground, no fear of total collapse. The product already struggles to find an audience. Let the players walk and see what happens next. Unrivaled already ran that experiment, and the results were devastating. The harsh truth nobody wants to discuss is that the WNBA doesn't survive on its own financial merit. It survives because the NBA subsidizes its losses year after year. For decades, billionaire owners have absorbed red ink for public relations, community goodwill, and long-term brand positioning. But even charity has breaking points. When employees demand more while delivering less, patience evaporates quickly. This entire situation reveals the biggest miscalculation of all. The players' union confused Caitlin Clark's individual popularity with league-wide value creation. They mistook a statistical outlier for a permanent trend. One generational talent doesn't elevate an entire ecosystem, especially when that ecosystem shows resentment instead of building around the asset. When Clark isn't on screen, audiences leave. The data proves it, the ratings confirm it, and the silence afterward makes it undeniable. Reality doesn't negotiate or compromise or bend to wishes. It simply reveals itself without emotion. And right now, it's revealing a league that confused a brief moment with a lasting movement. What comes next won't be dramatic or explosive. It'll be much worse than that. It'll be quiet, predictable, and deeply humiliating. Players either accept something very close to the old collective bargaining agreement, or they strike and discover how little actual leverage they possess. There is no third option hiding somewhere. The fantasy that ownership will panic and surrender has already been destroyed by those ratings. You don't negotiate desperately when your opponent just proved they can't attract viewers. A strike wouldn't shut down the league the way players imagine. It wouldn't trigger public outrage or force emergency concessions. It would simply confirm what the market already suspects, that the product is completely optional. Viewers won't miss what they weren't watching anyway. Sponsors won't rush to rescue a league that doesn't move metrics. Networks won't apply pressure when reruns perform equally well. The silence would speak louder than any protest could. Unrivaled, meanwhile, has already written its own ending. Whether it officially shuts down after this season, or limps along burning investor money for another year hardly matters. Its core purpose has already failed completely. It was meant to demonstrate demand outside the WNBA structure. Instead, it proved the exact opposite. There is no hidden audience waiting to be discovered. There is no untapped market being ignored by networks. The product has been offered repeatedly on different platforms with different stars and massive promotional support. The response has been identical every single time. This is where the media narrative completely disintegrates. For years, fans were told the problem was exposure, that if women's basketball received proper marketing, audiences would materialize. Unrivaled got exposure, prime slots, major network backing, and endless coverage. The audience still didn't show up, which means the problem was never visibility. It was demand itself. The most crushing realization for players is that this moment didn't arrive because they failed to fight hard enough. It arrived because they fundamentally misunderstood what they were fighting with. Leverage isn't something you declare. It's something you demonstrate. And leverage vanishes the instant your alternative option fails publicly. Once that happens, every bold statement becomes empty noise. What makes this especially painful is that the league was handed a genuine once-in-a-generation opportunity. Caitlin Clark brought measurable, undeniable interest. Real viewership numbers, real momentum, real proof that the ceiling could actually move higher. For the first time, women's basketball had evidence that breakthrough popularity was possible. Instead of building around that foundation, the ecosystem fractured. Resentment replaced smart strategy. Ideology overwhelmed business sense. Rather than consolidating around what actually worked, they demanded that what didn't work receive equal treatment. Markets don't function that way. They never have and never will. You don't get compensated for being adjacent to demand. You get compensated for generating it. And outside of Clark, the evidence is brutally clear. Remove her from the equation, and everything collapses back to baseline. That doesn't mean these athletes lack skill or don't work incredibly hard. It simply means that skill alone isn't the product being sold. Attention is the product. This is why the next phase will be defined by quiet retreats rather than loud victories. Public solidarity will fade as private negotiations begin. Players who spoke loudest about unity will be first to secure individual protections. Principles bend quickly when mortgage payments are due. Beliefs soften when contracts are on the table. That's not hypocrisy in action. That's basic human nature. Ownership understands this dynamic perfectly. They don't need to rush anything. Time works in their favor completely. The longer negotiations drag on, the weaker the player position becomes. Every failed broadcast reinforces the same conclusion. Every missed opportunity narrows the available path forward. Eventually, acceptance becomes inevitable. Not because players got convinced, but because alternatives disappeared entirely. The final irony is that none of this required hostility or resistance from league management. The market handled everything on its own. It stripped away illusions, exposed the difference between visibility and actual value, and clarified what drives real interest versus what merely pretends to. In the end, this isn't about punishment or assigning blame. It's about reality asserting itself without apology. Women's basketball does have a commercial ceiling right now, and that ceiling has a very specific name. Pretending otherwise doesn't raise that ceiling higher. Ignoring data doesn't move it forward. Only building around proven demand creates real change. Eventually, everyone learns the same fundamental lesson. You're not worth what you believe you deserve. You're worth what someone will pay when they have genuine choice. The audience has made its choice clear. So the real question isn't whether players should strike or accept the old deal. The real question is whether they're ready to accept what the market has been telling them consistently, or whether they'll keep fighting a reality that doesn't negotiate back.